delta of the Amazon, the world mother. The Amazon is, the largest female geographical feature on the planet. And here we had a total eclipse of the sun on a winter solstice completing itself at Belém. And Belém is the Portuguese word for Bethlehem. You see, I was seriously, it's called delusion of reference, this condition. So, and I thought, wow, far out. Now we have the answer to Yeats' question. You know what Yeats' question was? What rough beast is it that slouches toward Bethlehem to be born? And so I was all quite keen on all of this. As if that weren't strange enough. Whatever is, whenever somebody comes up with something like that, the desperate argument of the pseudo-rationalists, when really slammed to the wall, is that this information was known, it was published in books, these eclipse tracks, these ephemerides and so forth, it was all published in books, and consequently, you didn't predict the future, you merely tapped into the sum total of the human database already existed, and your unconscious has taken all these clues and all this data and woven it together into a delusion, which is designed to suck you in and trap you. Well, this is a hard argument to overcome. The only way that you could overcome that argument is that if you predicted an event that was non-repeating and that nobody on Earth knew it was going to happen or could possibly know that it was going to happen at the time you made the prediction. So I was in the early months of 73 and the late months of 72 running around telling everybody that this winter solstice with an eclipse over the delta of the Amazon was going to be a cosmic importance. Well then, about March of 1973, I was reading my morning paper, and on page 4 there was this large headline that said, "On brightest comet yet headed toward Earth." And I was reading this thing and it said, this object will reach perihelion, meaning closest approach to the sun, on December 22nd of this year. This was the comet Kohoutek. Well, now the interesting thing about Kohoutek was it didn't amount to much, but I had predicted its window of appearance before it was detected by humans during the surface anywhere on the planet. So it was just from the mushroom to me, from the human unconscious, couldn't come from any calculation of past events that a unique long period comet, never before seen, probably never to be seen again, was going to fall right smack in the center of my window of predictive intensity. So, it's just an instance of the cosmic giggle. I mean, in terms of what does it mean, it's like, when that question was posed to Mr. Natural, he said it don't mean shit. But isn't it strange? Well, that's enough of that. That's just, all of these things are attempts to make a statement about the frontier of understanding. And to the degree that, in other words, it's like there's a perception which wants to be born, but it is, since it's at the edge of cognitive revelation, it's very hard to get it right. The I Ching, morphogenetic field, the Tarot, the time waves that we looked at yesterday, these are all back in the history of the evolution of ideas and see what it is like, what the ideological climate is like, right before an idea crystallizes and is finally gotten straight, or pretty straight. An area where that happens that I spent some time looking around in is the 15 years preceding Darwin's publication of The Origin of Species and Alfred Russel Wallace's paper in the Royal Society in London. All of biology in England and Germany and on the continent, all of biology was intensely involved with what the literature at the time called the problem of the species. And, all these people were exploring various parts of the world, especially the tropics. They could see that if you go from one Indonesian island to another, there is shifts of species, very slightly modified forms. In other words, they had all the ingredients in front of them on the table, and people were trying to figure it out, but they didn't quite have it. And then it crystallized in the minds of certain people. For Alfred Russel Wallace, who is the real discoverer of natural selection, it sort of relates to our theory of creativity. He had malaria on the island of Ternate, north of the Moluccas, or in the North Moluccas. And in the 5th day of this intense malarial fever, he saw the solution to the problem of the species. And he wrote it down in this fevered state, and then he worked his way through this illness. And when he came down and looked at what he'd written, he couldn't find fault with it. It seemed right. It's just a page and a half. It's preserved. It's all there. So he didn't know what exactly to do. So he decided he would write a letter to the greatest natural scientist of the age, who was the aristocratic and well-connected Charles Darwin back in England. By this time, Wallace had been 6 years knocking around in the forests of Indonesia. So he sends this letter to Darwin. Darwin had been working on The Origin of Species for nearly 18 years. This letter arrives in the post. He opens it up and he just says, "Oh, shit. Who is this guy? Some surveyor from Wales has beaten me to the punch, And so he I suppose he got on the phone, but he sent a message with a servant to Charles Lyell, who was his great friend and the president of the Royal Society at that time, and said, Charlie, this is a real problem. I'm bringing this book out. This guy looks like he scooped me. And Lyell said, don't worry. Here's what we'll do. We'll get him to deliver a paper at the Royal Society, and we'll have you deliver a paper the same evening. And you know how everybody adjourns to get drunk at the intermission. So we'll just schedule him after the intermission. And this was done. And this is why Charles Darwin is the discoverer of evolution. For a few decades it was called the Darwin-Wallace theory, but eventually, and it's an interesting story, although not relevant to what we're doing, but what overturned, somewhat relevant, the reason Wallace became persona non grata in English science was because he would not genuflect before pure reduction. He said there is more to evolution than mutation and natural selection. There is a spiritual element, and that was all it took for him to get the blues, because 19th century scientific theory in biology was absolutely phobic of theism. spiritual assumptions out of all of their theories. There is no purpose recognized in Darwinian evolutionary theory. To speak of purpose in their minds was to completely misunderstand what was being suggested. And what they wanted was a theory of how life could evolve and come to be that would be specifically without purpose, because the only kind of purpose they could imagine was God's plan, and they wanted to dump that whole idea. It was a very fierce intellectual struggle. As the inheritors of the victory, we don't really realize what a desperate struggle that was. I mean, as recently as 120 years ago, you could call yourself a member of the British intelligentsia, and you could believe that the Earth was created at 10 a.m. on September the 6th, 2344 BC. That was